Well, thanks everyone for coming to join me today. I'm Jerry Wolf from Wolf Cattle. We're also partners with Riverview Dairy. I've spent a lifetime, my entire career has been in the beef cattle business, founded by my father, the late Leonard Wolf. And since '95, the Fair family, our neighbors and relation, give us the opportunity to partner with them and also be part of the dairy business since 1995. Today we're working together as one company known as Riverview Wolf Cattle. I also got my colleague and partner in business, Adam Zellweger, here. Adam is more directly involved with the breeding to feeding project of breeding limousine to dairy cows. And I help oversee not only that segment of our operation, but all of our beef production. So this is what makes up our company. We primarily have three components to it of dairy, crops, and beef. The dairy and crops operate under the name of Riverview, and our beef segment operates under the name of Wolf Cattle. We have operations, our headquarters is Morse, Minnesota. We have dairy operations in Minnesota, Minnesota and South Dakota, and have now more recently moved our replacement heifer production to Arizona and New Mexico. And then on the beef side, this is the geographic region that we operate in on the beef side. So home is there in Morse, Minnesota. And we also have operations in South Dakota, 2 feed yards, 2 stocker ranches, and in Nebraska we have 2 feed yards and cow-calf ranch. We have a capacity of about 40,000 head on our feedlot side, and we market right at 60,000 head of fed cattle marketings a year. This explains, we call this our strategy sheet. This is how we operate on the beef side. So we're in the genetics business. We've been in the beef business. My father started in 1955, so over a half a century ago. Now 60 years old. We entered into the genetics business in 1970. So we've been in the genetics business for 45 years. Our primary breed always has been limousine. And about 15 years ago, we incorporated Limflex, which is a limousine Angus hybrid. And more recently have added a few Angus to our genetic herd, but our primary herd is limousine. We then sell genetics, and we've been doing that for 40 plus years on the beef side, primarily bulls, because AI isn't that prevalent on the beef side. And now on the dairy side, for the last 3 years, we've been selling semen through the help of some alliances that we've built with semen companies, getting semen out to dairies, and then buy those calves back. So the middle box there, we purchase those calves back. That's been our model on the beef side for 40 plus years, and we're now implementing that on the dairy side, buying calves back of our known genetics and running them through our feed yards, feeding those calves out and selling fed cattle to packers and processors. Our primary customer today is Tyson, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later on. Not sure how these are advancing. I don't know what I'm touching here. Whoop. Gather performance data in each segment. Use that data as a guide when repeating the process, making it a little better each time. So being in the genetics business, we've put a strong focus on tracking that performance all the way through the feed yard. And our business back in 55 and 1970 and still is today, our economic engine is cattle feeding. Our genetics is there to support our cattle feeding. So it's the information that we get out of our feed yards and from our customers, processors that are buying our fed cattle, that drives our genetic component, making sure we're raising the right cattle that work both in the feed yard and for our customers, the processors that are buying them. We try and stay as transparent as we can and share that information back up the supply chain to keep building a better system. So dairy using beef on dairy, why now? Tight beef supplies worldwide. We've had a shrinking cow herd, and we'll take a look at the numbers the next slide. Feedlots and packers are searching for uniform quality, consistent cattle supply. I'd like to elaborate on that one a little bit. What we've noticed, and we've been feeding these Limousin dairy cross cattle now for over 3 years. Very predictable and very consistent. And you think about it, with the extensive use of AI in the dairy industry, I don't need to tell you, you got a very narrow genetic base where it's not used that prevalent in the beef industry. And then we go into a dairy and we use maybe one, at most 2 bulls on hundreds or thousands of cows. I mean, those cattle are cookie cut, and they're very uniform and very predictable. We like that in the feed yard. The packers like it that are buying them from us, knowing they can get a consistent calf. Feedlots are not full. We shrunk our cow herd. We still got the infrastructure in the beef cattle industry. We got excess bunk space, excess pen space. Same with processing. Processors are needing cattle. So if we can pull more high quality beef cattle out of the dairy cow supply, it's going to be a win-win. Solution to what to do with a Jersey bull calf. I'll show you the timeline, but in our Riverview dairies, we implemented this in 2010. That was probably the main reason we did it. We implemented it on our Jersey cows, and I mean, as many of you know, there's just not much of a market for day-old Jersey calves. So we wanted to see what happened if we put a unit of Limousin semen in there, got us a good beef cross calf, and we amazed ourselves at what we were able to add for value by breeding that Jersey cow to Limousin. Also works on a Holstein cow. You know, we don't have quite the data, quite the numbers. We're still building that data, but it definitely adds value to a Holstein cow as well, or even other dairy breeds for that part. We haven't tried it on so many, but we have dabbled in some. Beef is in short supply. This come from the USDA a year ago in 2014. All cattle and calves in the U.S. combined total 108 million head, down 3% from 117 million in 2012. And all cows and heifers that have calved, a total of 43.9 million head, that's down 2% from 2012. So dairy and beef cow herds combined, we have a shrinking cow herd as we got a growing demand for red meat and beef. The chart on the upper left is what's happened to our dairy cow inventory over the last 30 years. Starts in 85, we dipped, we were building back to about 98. We peaked at just over 35 million beef cows in 98. And in last 18 years, we've removed 6.3 million beef cows out of production. That's like 2/3 of the entire dairy herd in the U.S. We got that many less cows. The chart on the upper right is then the dairy cow inventory. You can see we had that same decline in numbers down to 98 when beef was peaking. Dairy had kind of plateaued, and we've been hung in there, give or take a few, right at 9 million. But both herds combined were short of cows. At the same time, many of you are familiar with this chart, but in over a 100-year span, we're going to take a world population from 3 billion to a projected 9 billion by the year 2050. And as we have growing economies around the world, we expect more of them countries to want to eat more meat, more red meat, and more American beef. This chart is then the beef demand index. This is not what consumers are consuming. This is not what we're producing. This is a reflection of what consumers are willing to pay for beef. Beef demand is high, both in the U.S. and around the world. If you look back at the chart prior to 1998, we saw about a 20-year decline in beef demand. That seemed to have bottomed out in 98 and was on a nice upswing until 04. Y'all remember 04, the cow that stole Christmas? That's when BSE hit. We lost some demand. And then again in 08 with the housing and banking crisis and the economy woes, we lost some more. We seem to have bottomed again in 2010, and beef demand index looks real good. I like this This slide, this is some simple math that I think tells the story real well on the breeding to feeding project. You take a dairy cow, sell approximately $6,000 worth of milk out of her in a year. And with these breeding her to limousine, we can make a real nice 1,400-pound steer that on today's market will bring right at $2,100, right close to what just a good beef cross steer will bring. So you got a total of $8,300 to work with that cow. For every beef calf that's out there, there's a beef cow that's out there roaming and eating feed somewhere, and that's all we have to sell is that $2,200 calf. So we all know we got a limited amount of land mass and forage production in the world. It's only going to make sense to run that through a dairy cow and still get a good portion of our beef supply from that dairy cow. So we see this whole program as just being real sustainable, you know, and as we move forward in the next decades, more and more of our beef is going to come from dairy cows. So I'm talking straight dairy steers now, why do straight dairy steers get discounted? When we sell straight Holstein fed cattle to processors, we automatically start with a $6 discount behind regular beef cattle. We pay less for them as feeder cattle because of poor feed conversion in the feedlot. It takes more pounds of feed to put on a pound of gain. They have a lower dressing percent. You start with a live weight, you just got a lower percent of that carcass weight, or that live weight that makes carcass weight. You breed it to limousine and you get a higher percentage that makes carcass weight. Dairy cattle have narrow ribeyes. I mean, they got more of an oval shaped ribeye. You breed it to limousine, you pop that ribeye out, put some nice shape into it. That ribeye is also a good reflection of total carcass cutability. So limousine's a very high cutability breed, very high red meat yielding breed, so they complement the dairy breeds very, very well. You know, and I mean, it's the reason we don't put beef cows in the parlor, right? I mean, they're not bred to milk. Dairy cows weren't bred to raise beef, so that's the woes that come with them, and we can fix that with just one cross, a limousine. You know, in my 40-year career in agriculture, and primarily animal agriculture, we've always looked for win-wins. This one's a triple win. It's good for the dairyman, it's good for the beef producer, and it's good for the processors. Dairyman can add more value to a bull calf. He can use the breeding selection tools that are available out there, whether it's the production records or whether it's DNA. You can pick your cows you want replacements out of, use the balance of the herd to raise beef, and you can tie to a proven breeding program where you know there's demand for that beef cross calf coming out the other end. For feedlots, we got a dairy beef animal that has been bred for more beef and less dairy. We compensate for them shortfalls that we talked about in the last slide, increased feed efficiency and increased dressing percent. And then packers, they get to buy a more value-added carcass that's a consistent supply, similar sized carcasses. They work for their non-commodity. NHTC stands for non-hormone treated cattle. These cattle work very well for that. We can feed them without any implants, destined for value-added markets, export markets that don't allow implanted beef. These limousine dairy cross carcasses are working excellent for NHTC and value-added programs. So we don't only go from selling a dairy steer at a $6 discount, but we're able to get several dollar premiums actually over the beef market even. Why Wolf Limousine? Of the continental breeds, they're a lower birth weight breed. They're lowest birth weight of the major beef breeds. They're the best on feed efficiency. And I've always been told, and when we've made this cross in the last 4 or 5 years, we've really proven that as you cross complete opposites, you really maximize heterosis. So in terms of feed to carcass weight gain, if a Jersey is here and a limousine is here, You know, you would think you would end up about halfway. You get the value of heterosis, and you actually get like way up here. You know, it's just, like I said, it amazed us on how well they've done. Limousin has been called the carcass breed for decades. We improved resting percent, red meat yield, ribeye size and shape. All the sires that we're selling semen on have been tested and selected for calviness, growth, and carcass traits. And we're using all homozygous bulls. Those of you who are familiar with the Limousin breed, they're a French breed that come from France 50 years ago. It brought them into America. They were a red breed. We have breeded them up from Angus cattle. We now have American purebred Limousin that are homozygous black. So we're using all black Limousin bulls, breeding the dairy cows and getting a 100% black calf crop. This is a simple or a small little study that we were able to do and work with the University of Minnesota 2 years ago, back in 2013. And these were calves that come out of our very own dairies, so they got the same birth, roughly the same birth date, are born within a narrow window. And we just wanted to put some straight Jersey steers on test. And we call our Limousin dairy cattle beef builders. So the beef builders are Limousin Jerseys. HCW stands for hot carcass weight. A little bit of some of the data that's not on here is they were the same age when they went on test. The beef builder steers weighed right at 900 pounds. The Jersey steers weighed at 800 pounds. After being on test, the beef builders hung up a 900-pound carcass, and the straight Jersey steer did a 710-pound carcass. So nearly 200 pounds of carcass weight on the same age animal. There's a reflection in average daily gain. Jerseys gained 1.77. One shot of Limousin, and we were able to double that, get 3.5 pounds of gain. Feed conversion right there, that's a big one to us. That's directly, that's the needle that we watch, the number that we watch the most, because it's highly correlated to cost of gain. And feed is 80% of our cost in the feedlot business. We were able to put on a pound of live body weight gain with 7 pounds of dry matter feed, where on that Jersey steer it took 11 pounds. There's the quality grade. We really didn't give up any quality grade. We had a few more primes with the straight Jersey, but then we actually had more choice. So choice and higher, we were at 80% on both, so we didn't give up any quality grade. We maintained our quality grade, but look at that bottom line at ribeye size. We had 11.8 on a straight Jersey and took it all the way up to 14.8. We added 3 pounds of ribeye size, 3 square inches of ribeye size with 1 cross of Limousin. That ribeye is not only your most valuable cut of meat, one of your most valuable cuts of meat, but it's a good reflection of the entire cutability, retail meat yield that we added to that animal throughout his whole body. This is just a photo shot of a set of cattle that are about ready to harvest. These are Limousin Jersey cross steers. This just helps depict what we're, puts a picture to a live animal. I can drive some pretty astute cattlemen buy pens of cattle like that, beef cattle guys, and if I didn't tell them they were out of Jersey cows, they would never guess it. You can see the length of body that we've added to those cattle and the muscle shape and that quarter and then that foreshoulder, and them calves are half Jerseys out of our own dairies. How old are they? They would have been right at about 17, 18 months when just prior to slaughter. Good question. Those steers went out weighing about 1360. We found we can actually take them bigger and not lose efficiency. And we've been marketing cattle closer to about 14 to 1450 pounds. As I said earlier, our primary customer, we sell to various packers, but our primary customer is Tyson. We deliver fed cattle to Tyson every week from our cattle feeding company. Very first set of steers we harvested there in 2012, they had their eyes on them, and they've been watching them ever since. They actually use them for their value-added programs, as I said earlier, because of their consistency. This is a quote we got from them. These Limousin Jersey cross cattle are outperforming our plant average for quality, as well as not showing any dairy influence. We're actually getting a higher percentage of certified Angus beef in your beef builders than we do in Angus influence cattle. Most of the Angus Holsteins that I've seen in the past will not lose their dairy identity. So if they show up as a fed steer at the packing plant and Tyson grades them as a dairy carcass, we're back to that $6 discount. So that was goal number one for us, was to get rid of that $6 a hundredweight discount. So a very happy customer. They like what we're doing. So what can we do? We as Wolf Cattle in Riverview asked ourselves that question back in 2010 when we started crossing them. I apologize. It's either my clumsy fingers or a touchy that I'm not getting the slides quite right. But use a homozygous black Limousin bull on dairy cows. Make what we call a beef builder. So dairymen can identify cows to get replacements from and breed with dairy semen, increase the genetic value of their herd, and then come back and use Wolf Limousin semen on the remaining cows to make value-added cross. The opportunity to use genetics that have been tested for conception, calving, feedlot performance, and market performance. Here's the timeline of how it evolved in our own Riverview dairies. We're Wolf Cattle in Riverview working together. We bred our first cows, Jersey cows Limousin, in summer of 2010. They were born, and this is a picture of one of the very first calves born in March of 2011. First 6,000 calves born, we had an average birth weight of 78.7 and 98.8% unassisted. All eyes were on calving when them first calves were born, because our dairy managers all told us if we have calving difficulty, this project will be dead. So those of us on the beef side, we had all our fingers crossed, hoping this would work. So there too, we were pleasantly surprised. Then June of 2012 is when we shipped some of them first Limousin Jersey cross cattle to Tyson to be harvested. At that same time in June of 2012, we had, I believe it was June, might have been a month or two even ahead of that, we sat down and met with a group from the leadership team of Gen X, and we forged an alliance with Gen X called Breeding to Feeding, and where we were going to take this to the larger dairy market. Gen X then started handling semen on Wolf Limousin bulls, Limousin and Limflex bulls, selling them to dairies, and we agreed that we would be there to try and buy those calves back once they were born. Then in 2014, early 2014, we opened it up to the other semen companies. Since then, Select Sires, Alta, and CRV has come on board. So them are the 4 semen companies that are now selling Wolf Limousin semen to other dairies. How breeding to feeding works. Wolf Cattle raises Limousin bulls, 45 years of breeding behind them cattle. They've been tried and tested, so we select for the genetics that work in our cattle feeding company. The semen companies then market that Limousin semen to dairies. Wolf Cattle buys the resulting calves back and feed the cattle out, sell them to Tyson. Each sire must be tested and approved before entering the program. Here's some actual results on thousands of breeding. This is from our Riverview dairies. Conception rate on Jersey cows has been 49.5%, 98.8% unassisted calving, 79.5 birth weight. Holsteins 50% conception rate, 97.6 unassisted, and just over a 92-pound birth weight. The dairy breeding strategy that we use and quite a few others use is we're going 3 rounds of sexed heifer semen. Seems to be the number that works to get our replacements. And then any cow that doesn't get bred after that gets bred limousine. So those conception rates are based off of cows that have had 3 services of sex semen. Here's a beef builder update. Today we've marketed over 10,000 head. Cattle are consistently grading high choice with low yield grades. Yield grades lower is better. One's best, 5 is poorest. Most of these cattle are yield grade 1s and 2s with a few 3s. Actually yield grading better than most beef cattle. Over 10,000 births at Riverview Dairy. Again, there's our birth weights. On the Jerseys, 79.8, and the Holsteins, 92.3. Tyson, our main purchaser, is starting to use those carcasses for value-added markets for grocery store chains that are coming and wanting a consistent, predictable supply. We found they're actually using our dairy crosses to meet some specific market needs. So what does Wolf Cattle want out of the program? That photo is a picture of our annual bull sale. We sell right at 600 bulls a year. The top 400 of them sell on our auction sale, which is held the last Friday of each March. I want to invite everybody to come. It's open to the world. That's where ranchers show up to buy bulls. That's where semen companies show up. We have the bulls identified in our sale catalog that we recommend to use on dairy cows. Semen companies buy those bulls, test them and prove them, and then market that semen. We want a chance to buy the calves back and raise wolf cattle genetics in our feed yards so that we have predictable cattle coming into our feed yards. Here's the regions in the country that we're working with on breeding to feeding. That the green is active, so we're actively buying calves back out of those regions. We got a strong presence in California. We got a system in place where we're taking day-old calves from dairies, getting them in California calf ranches, bringing the 400-pound calves out of there. Another strong presence in Texas Panhandle and eastern New Mexico. The smaller circle is right around our very own dairies up in western Minnesota, working some on the I-29 corridor. We got a strong presence in Wisconsin. We got a great working relationship with EBJ. They help us with the logistics of picking up day-old calves and getting them to us. EBJ has since helped us get into Ohio, so we got a system figured out in Ohio. And then the yellow dots in Florida and the Northwest and Washington, we're doing it more on a case-by-case if we can pull it together. The red dot in Idaho, there's a lot of our semen going into Idaho. There's a strong enough demand there from other cattle feeding companies in southern Idaho for the beef builder cattle that we're not getting them bought back out of there, but they have a very good market for the cattle there in Idaho. This would be the title says current calf premiums, but this would be the average price that we're paying for that day-old calves have gotten on the crossbred calves. So on the very left-hand side, underneath the Jersey cow, we got an average of $385, and then the heifer calves were $50 behind that. The average price on a crossbred Holstein calf has been $460, and the heifers are $75 behind that. It starts here in the bottom, in November of 13, with an average of $125. That's when the day-old market was relatively cheap, and we rode it up through the 200s, the 300s, 400, and in June of this year we hit 500. Now you can see with today's market, it's starting to tail off. This is a website that we created just for breeding to feeding. So you can go on and access that, and we update this every week. And you can keep track of our history of what we're paying for crossbred calves. www.breedingtofeeding.com. This here is a comparison of calves that if we wanted to buy them, we had to go to the Overland Stockyards video auction and buy them. It's all coming from one dairy out of Southern California. And I think we bought most of these limousine cross calves, but didn't get them all, right, Adam? We didn't get them all. Sometimes someone outbid us. But each week there was some Angus dairy cross calves on the sale. So this is just an actual quote. It's a video auction. You start again, starting on the bottom in July of 14. The limousine cross brought $340. The Angus cross brought $290. This here is then the dollar difference on them 120 head. There was 2 times, once here in November of 14, that the Angus outsold the limousines by a little bit, and another one up here in July of 15. They outsold us by 3 cents. But if you add those all up together, the limousine cross calves actually brought over $100,000 premium. That's on $113,000 premium. That's on 1,440 calves. And that was made available on a video auction for the whole world to appraise. This is another example of a real world example. The results from a Texas dairy is a 3,000 cow dairy that's been using our semen for a couple years now. He's been calving them for 26 months. He is not in expansion mode. So we're getting about 1/3 of his cows, 1,000 of them. Out of them 3,000 cows, we were able to get 1,000 limousine crosses. At the bottom there where it says straight dairy, that is an average of what day-old price was for Holsteins and Jerseys on the same market that we were paying $360. He would have gotten $128 if he hadn't been on the breeding program. So over a 26-month period, he was able to net another $237,000, almost $250,000 on a 3,000 cow dairy by using limousine implement in the breeding to feeding program. And that would be on 1/3 of his cows. Talking to our own dairymen, our own managers, the guys who head up the dairy segment of our business at Riverview, being involved in breeding to feeding for 3 years, we're very well aware. This is our summary of what we feel a dairyman wants out of the program. Wants a sufficient number of replacement heifers. He's got to have a plan in place to get his replacements so he don't breed himself out of business. Wants high fertility semen. We understand the importance of getting cows pregnant. Minimal calving issues. Want that calf born without any trouble. And then knowing he's got a market for his calf. We're very cognizant of them 4 bullet points and are always paying attention to it. With that, I brought Adam with me to help me with the tough questions. Feel free to ask us any questions. Adam is our go-to guy on breeding to feeding, so I brought his phone number and his website. If anyone wants to copy that down, he's the one to call. And if you happen to be here from California, we have a California rep, Mike Hall, that's California only. Is there someone from EBJ here? Scott. You answer. There's Scott Toberman from EBJ. Tell you what, if they can pick them up, they'll get them to us. So you want to answer that question?
So, you can pick them up for another answer to that question would be, if the dairyman, I don't care what dairy you're at, what we've seen all over the country, if you use Limousin semen, you will get more for that calf, whether we buy it or somebody else buys it.
Conrad.
In comparison to the Limousin marbling and flavor, how does that cross comply? As far as marbling and the cross, and also flavor checks.
We have done very limited. We did some early on, but it's very limited to testing flavor, tenderness, and juiciness. And we went and bought certified Angus beef primals from Tyson, and we pulled primals out of our beef builders. We actually did select, choice, and certified Angus, and it was not statistical different. So, which we were very comfortable with. I mean, CA certified Angus has very, very good recognition for quality, nationwide, worldwide. So if that we could stack up to them on quality, we were very happy with that. And it seems like, I could show you data on thousands of cattle. I mean, the cattle are grade 85 to 90% choice or higher. And we actually get, being black-hided, we actually get about 35 to 40% certified Angus beef out of these cattle. Tyson's marketing them certified Angus beef because the protocol reads, the rules read, they just need to be black-hided and the upper 2/3 of choice. I'm sorry?
How much weight gain with the hot country which is relatively hot in United States? How do they grow?
Question is, I had a question here is, how do they do in a hot environment or in a hot country environment? We fed cattle in the south, so we fed some out down in Texas. I mean, they performed very well. These cattle have less back fat than a Limousin Angus, because trust me, in the beef world, we've been crossing Limousin on Angus cows for 40 years, and we're still feeding thousands of them. I mean, this hasn't totally replaced it yet. Don't know that it ever will totally replace it. But I'm going to just say this. An Angus is going to put on about that much fat. You cross them with Limousin and you cut that fat in about half. You put Limousin on a Jersey or a Holstein and you get even less fat. We found that the less external fat that an animal has, the more heat tolerant they are. It's the fat that makes them hard to deal with heat.
You want me to take the easy one?
Huh?
Yeah. The technical ones are for Jerry.
No, go ahead, take it.
Wolf Cattle has marketed semen and exported cattle around the world. Brazil, Central America, Europe, Australia. So it's nothing new for us.
Asian country, because look at their face, most of them are from Asian country.
Okay. We'd like to do that too.
We have sent breeding stock to China. I'm not sure what all Asian countries, but we've not sent any yet to Korea or Japan. But we're not a respecter of countries. The only thing that would keep us from sending our genetics to a country would be a health protocol. So if we have interest from a foreign country, be it an Asian country or be it a European country or a South American country, we just go through the process of finding out what the health test requirements are. The cattle meet the health test requirements. We can send those genetics.
But the semen goes to Asian countries. It does go under your own name, or you go through with some other business partners?
it would likely go through a semen company partner. Okay?
3,000 pounds dairy pickup calves. They were weight.
Yeah,
Take
most,
that one, Adam.
3 times a
Repeat
week.
the question.
Okay, the question was on a 3,000 cow dairy, how often would you pick up calves? And the calves are getting picked up from those dairies, regardless if they're limousine or not, and most likely it would be every day in that large of a facility. That's what the dairymen want. They don't want calves around. It's not what they're doing, is raising calves. So
So when you use semen, you use the male sex of semen, or do they have a male sex?
So the question is when we use our limousine beef semen, do we use sex male semen? In a perfect world, that's what we'd like to do, because a bull calf or a steer calf is worth more than a heifer calf as a feeding animal. But we found you'll give up two things. You increase your cost, your semen cost, and you decrease your conception rate. And most dairies, if they have a system that they want to get their cows pregnant with heifer semen first, by the time they get to here, they just want to get cows pregnant. And I'll be honest with you, I mean, you correct me if I'm wrong, Adam, but one of the things that's really helped pull this program through is our semen gets cows pregnant. You know, does a good job of getting cows pregnant. We get to be the cleanup bull.
I have a question. Because limousine cattle, my professor in China did study about, and yeah, really have some advantages. They grow fast. They have high efficiencies. But I heard that limousine cattle, compared with other beef cattle, they are more sensitive to the stress. Or like I know that the transportation stress. So limousine cattle, they need more time to recover from some stress. I don't know your experiments about you catch so many limousine cattle. So what do you think about this? And another question is, I saw your slide there. You said that the limousine crossbreed, the bulls, the price or value is triple compared with the dairy bull. I don't know if that is correct. Correct to understand your slide. How that works? Because the crossbreed, we can understand that they may grow faster than the dairy bull, or their beef quality or something. So how it makes.
So is this the slide you were talking about where we tripled? Okay, let me explain that. If you see there, 2/3 of this herd was Jersey, and 1/3 was Holstein. So, and that is day-old price. So, probably his Holstein calves brought more like $275 to $300 per head, and his Jersey calves might have brought what, Adam?
30.
20 to 30. So when we're working with a Jersey bull calf, when we get to go compare ourselves against a Jersey bull calf with what we're willing to pay, we get to add a lot of value. You know, we add some value to a Holstein, but we add a lot to a Jersey because we start out with so little value. So because of that herd was 2/3 Jersey, that's why we were able to triple the price. Does that make sense? Now your stress question. Did anyone hear his questions? He asked about, he heard or someone told him that limousine don't deal with stress as well. Would that be fair? The limousine we imported from France 45 plus years ago, they had some docility challenges. And because of those docility challenges, they got more stress. And anytime they got more stress, it took them longer to get out of the stress. Limousine was the first breed to, we actually invented a docility EPD about 25 years ago. So I think there's been more selection pressure put on docility and breeding cattle quieter than the limousine breed than any beef breed out there. So my answer to whoever has that perception is That was 30 years ago, and we don't see that anymore today. Mhm.
On your sheet, you said you pulled through here from some retailers. What types of retailers are you selling to?
Well, I know one in particular is the Hy-Vee grocery stores in the Midwest. Yep.
Have you looked at any of your Limflex or Angus bulls, breeding them dairy at all?
You want to take that one, Adam?
Yeah, Lemflex, we're doing a lot of breeding of Lemflex on Holstein cows. Angus, we're not really interested in Angus cross, simply because of the history and what Tyson's told us in the past, that they've killed them for 30 years and they just aren't just doing it on the carcass side. See, Angus is a lighter muscled animal, and a dairy cow is, and so you don't fix light muscled with a little more muscle, you fix light muscle with a lot more. That's why we're sticking with the Limousin. But Lemflex seem to work pretty good on the Holstein side. It's because you're getting a 3-way cross and 1 cross. The jury's out on what exactly it is, because it's a long process, and we just keep learning more and more as we go.
We're thinking the right genetic. The question was, have we tried Limflex and Angus versus just Limousin? This is a bit theory yet, but we're thinking the right mix might be a 75% Limousin, 25% Angus bull. That's considered a Limflex. Might be the right mix on a Holstein cow.
Haven't looked at it in jerseys either?
The straight Limousin on the Jersey has worked so well, it's like blown past our expectations that we don't have any reason to try and make it better. That might sound too good to be true, but it's, I mean, that quote from beef packers, especially big beef packers like Tyson, they're not quick to make compliments. I mean, that quote we had on there from Tyson saying how well they like the cattle. I mean, the cattle perform well for us. Our customers are extremely happy. Hey, that's what life's all about for us, you know.
The best breed for Holsteins. I mean, like the jerseys you said, Limousin is like 15.
Yeah, I just answered that question, so I'll say it again. For Holsteins, the question was, what's the best breed for Holsteins? A bull that is part Limousin and part Angus. We've been doing 50-50. We're going to move more towards a 75% Limousin, 25% Angus. We think will be the right blend for Holsteins. You know, dairy cattle are lighter muscled. I mean, we talked about that. Everyone knows that. They're bred to milk. The beauty of beef production is that the more muscle mass an animal has in their body, the more efficient they are. Because it takes less calories to put on a pound of lean muscle tissue than it does fat, bone, or any other body mass. So the more muscle we got in them, the more we prove efficiency. You know, the challenge we have with Holsteins is, what does a mature Holstein cow weigh? I'm not the most astute dairyman, so someone answer that for me. Give me a 1,500. Yeah. So we're working with a 1,500-pound cow, and I'll venture to say that there's plenty of 1,600s, maybe even too, right? 15 to 1,700-pound cows. We want to sell a 1,400 to 1,450-pound fat steer. So when we're starting with 1,100, 1,150-pound Jersey cow, and we bring them to a Limousin bull, we can bring that weight up very, very well and very efficiently. When you start with a cow this big and try and pull it back down a little bit, it's a little bit more of a challenge.
What, on your beef cows, on your Angus and your Limousin cows, what's your mature weight before they calve? 1,200, 1,300 pounds, your range cow?
Mature weight on our Limousin and Angus cows on range would be about 14 to 14 and a half.
Because in Montana, sometimes you see them cows, they're building, they're pretty
I think we had a question back here.
I'm in Virginia, which I know is a part of the country that you're not currently active in, but we are also seasonal heavy, and we have several seasonal herds in our area. Would you consider buying if it was on just a seasonal basis?
Yeah, definitely. If we could get together bigger loads, that would make it work as far as logistically and cost per head would be in line. So would you be selling them at what weight?
We could work that out.
Okay.
What we do is we probably, first part of our breeding season, breed back to dairy, and then go to the limousine, and then next year, like in a 30 or 45-day period, those calves come to dairy.
Numbers is the key on that. Scott would be glad to help you with that.
Keep in mind, when we're going long distances, if we can fill semis, and semis, the number we try and get to is 50,000 pounds. So that map we showed with the dots on it, that's where we have the systems in place to make it logistically happen. That doesn't mean we're exclusive to them areas if we can make it happen in any area outside those dots. So you help us with the logistics and help us figure it out, and please give us a call. Question in the back.
If this concept continues to grow and be successful, with the cow calf industry numbers being where they are and thinking they're in a rebuilding process, what's your vision of the impact to the beef industry in general? We know we keep quite a few black and whites in the upper Midwest, but if this gets widespread through the country, especially in utilizing Jersey calves, were basically not used much before. What's your vision of the beef market in the future?
So the question is what's the vision of what the market will be price-wise? What will it do to?
The animals available to feed
Yep.
in this country, because we are utilizing imports more so in recent years, recent times,
Yeah.
because of the lack of numbers.
We all know what. So I think everyone heard the question, right? We all know what high-priced corn did to the landscape in this country. I mean, that's one of the challenges we had and still have in the beef industry is we lost grassland to farm production. That's not the only challenge we have. I just read an article in a magazine, it was actually the National Cattlemen's newspaper here about a week ago, that our president just designated, I think it was 260,000 more acres of BLM land and forest land to monumental preservation land, that there will be no more cattle run on it. So we got those pressures. We got recreation pressures. It's going to be tough to have any significant build in our beef cow herd. And when you look at this model, so if we're harvesting resources, there's been a lot of talk in the beef industry for the last 2 years about building dry lot beef cow systems, and just dry lot and beef cows. I mean, whenever I hear that talk, I tell them, we do that. They say, you do? And I say, yeah, we call them dairies. If you're going to dry lot a cow, let's milk her. So I think that the dairy cow population, and Jersey is our lowest hanging fruit. I mean, we can flip them from being a calf worth 0 to 30 to being worth 300 pretty easy, But it'll even become prevalent throughout the dairy industry. And I think as we go forward in the future, we're going to see a higher percentage of our beef cattle population is going to come from dairy cows at the expense of maybe losing some market share with beef cows. Are we going to put more beef on the market and drive the market lower? Yeah, probably. I mean, if technologies make sense, you can't let markets or what you think it does to markets, and I shouldn't say technology because it's not a technology, it's a concept. If new concepts make sense, I mean, you just do it, you know what I mean? And then the markets will do what markets do. It'll take care of itself. Our market is going down now because it went too high, we went too high and we lost market share in the meat case. You know, we say the consumers are eating less beef. Well, they can only eat what we produce. You know, we shrunk our cow herd. If we only produce so much, they're only going to eat what we produce. So we lost market share in the meat case, and now we're starting to build some numbers back, and that's why we're seeing a price going down. But beef's here for the long haul. It's too good a product. The question is the dairy heifer replacement market. Adam, you want to take that one? Is there going to be, your question is there always going to be a surplus of dairy replacement heifers?
Well, I think as long as there's sex semen, I think we're going to have a lot of heifers. And today, what's different today is it's not only we have sex semen, we also have genomic testing. And everybody's getting more efficient with what animal they want a heifer from and breeding that animal to the sex dairy semen. And so we're gonna have more and better, higher quality replacement heifers. I mean, in just a year or so ago, you know, or year and a half, when we were out in California, they were talking about there was heifers going on feed in feedlots because they couldn't sell them, couldn't get enough for them. And that's the way that cycle goes too. Some of them get fed out. So instead of making too many and feeding an inefficient animal, let's just make enough for what we need, and then the rest go to beef. Then we're more efficient all the way around.
Yeah, I think the market will take care of that. But this whole concept will help us keep us from overproducing dairy cows, because now we have a better market for our bull cows. I see another question in the back. Go ahead.
I would just follow up on that. You have a beef cow operation, but honestly, we've been using Turkish cross for the last 25 years because of the texture, the one, the flavor.
You hear that, Conrad?
And so my thought was, you mentioned the markets. Isn't it something that maybe you could do a niche market for your concept of keeping that cross animal?
Yeah.
For one, you got a smaller ribeye, usually. And that's what we found anyway. It's more tender, and you haven't given anything else as far as flavor.
Yeah, we've just scratched the surface on adding value to these cattle by potentially branding or going to more value-added markets. I showed you the numbers. We have data so far on 10,000 marketings. That's in the last 3 years. In about 2 more years, we're going to beat about 30,000 marketings just inside our company, and it should keep growing from there. So as we get significant numbers, I mean, I think there's going to be potential to potentially brand it, you know, and at the very least capture some added value because we're fitting. You call them niche markets. I like to call them value-added markets. You know, niche seems like we're limiting size. Value added, the sky's the limit. Let's just figure out a way to sell it higher because it's higher quality. We're pretty excited about it. There's a lot of potential there. We just need the numbers. As we talk to even processors or retailers or food service or food distributors beyond the packer, the one thing they want if they're going to launch a specific brand is make sure there's enough supply in the pipeline to do it. You know, and I don't think we have quite the numbers there yet to do it. Go ahead.
Thank you for your time. My name is Sultan. I'm from Indonesia. I'm here from Ohio State University. I'm doing internship program. I'm the sponsor in management student. So I have a question for you, sir. According with your strategy that you use for your business, what do you think about breeding dairy beef in
So what kind of beef are you currently, what kind of cattle are you currently using for beef?
Indonesia, actually, we in our company we use the
Wagyu beef?
Yeah, it's only hard for other pets in the green because of very hot. So sometimes we use Angus, but I think it's same thing. So what do you think about the limousine?
Well, we've sent genetics to Brazil and Australia. I mean, very sent genetics to Mexico. So, you know, maybe not always tropical, but some very hot, more arid areas. And they've adapted very well. I mean, that's one, and the French, Limousin come from France back in the late 60s, early 70s. They sold them to us that way, and they were right. They said, you can use them in South Texas, and they'll do fine in Canada. If those cattle are in cold weather, they'll grow long hair. And if they're in hot weather, they slick off. And again, I'll say it again, I said it before, they don't deposit back fat. And it's usually the animals like Angus, and I would think Wagyu, if Wagyu could handle it, I'm pretty confident Limousin would, because they don't put on the excess back fat.
You said you have 60,000 fed cattle marketings per year. What percentage or how many of those are dairy beef cross calves?
Right now, we're going to be right at 20 to 25%.
So a little over a third for you.
No, 20 to 25%. That's where we are today. We see that coming closer to maybe more of a 50-50 mix in about 3 years. It's a faster growing segment of our beef company than our actual beef side is. Our beef side is growing. The dairy side's growing faster. Of course, we just started 3 years ago, and we started from zero. So,
Are you feeding them any straight dairy calves still?
question is, are we feeding any straight dairy calves? We are not. We've actually, in all our own dairies, we're implemented breeding to feeding on every dairy. So we're only raising straight dairy heifer calves and crossbred bull calves. Then the only calves we buy is Limousin crossbred calves.
Just a little bit of information regarding the question the students were asking, because these two students are from the second largest beef company in Indonesia. I mean, I've been to on their farms before, and except the Wagyu and Angus, you know, especially for the Wagyu, it always costs them a lot to raise the cattle there. I kind of understand that what they try to see is if there's any other replacement or any other way to still have a very good beef in the climate like in Indonesia. So the question would be, additional one would be, do you guys have a business over there in their country, this information they can bring back?
Do we do business there? Or do we do business there or work with?
Do you guys export or ship any semen to Indonesia, or?
We have not yet, but we could jump through the hoops to do that. We just need.
Because their company, they do the business with the worldwide sires and the select sires. They got something, but I'm sure the company is still looking for the new way to develop the business. Is that what you guys want to say?
Yeah, Select Sires and Gen X, CRV, and Alta all own our bulls.
Yeah.
So there's no reason they couldn't ship, you know, if the bull's tested out of the health protocol, there's no reason they couldn't ship semen there as well. If they're shipping other semen there, it could be done.
But you guys would be, so far you don't have a business over there, right?
Not in Indonesia, no. All our business is inside the United States. Now, we've exported genetics outside the United States, but we have no businesses set up in other countries. But if we could find someone to work with in that country, we can get our genetics to that country. So usually what we look for is a representative that runs under a different name, but then markets wolf cattle genetics in a given country. That's the way it's worked in Australia, that's the way it's worked in Brazil, in the different countries that we've been in.
I don't know if you have your branch in China, and if you promote your business in China. And I think there one more thing need to say that if you like do business in China, the another thing you need to think about is food materials. Different countries have different food materials. In China, there is no so many agro industry. There is no so many byproducts in the beef industry. So the beef is low quality beef. And so Jersey is very cow, and beef, I think, is picky. So then the another big cow like Semen cow, other kind of cow. So what do you think? Or if you need update your program, like choose another move to crossbreed to get better performance in China, such kind of situation. Like we have so many straw poultry to the cow.
So let me make sure I understand the question. The question is, do we need to take a look at China's production system to see if our genetics would actually work in that production system? Is that what you're asking? I would say the short answer to that is yes. I mean, so if I'm going to get serious, am I going to get serious about supplying China with our genetics? It would behoove us to get over there, understand the production system, and then make sure we're building the right genetics. And then it would also involve, it'd be trial and error, just like we learned here, right? Let's get some genetics over there. You give us feedback of what's not working, and we'll keep building it better, as long as we're transparent and sharing information. Okay? Yep. Are we out of time there, filmmaker? Okay. Thanks for your attention.
Thank you.
You've been a great audience.
You guys got a couple minutes.
Yeah.